There, there's right. Back, this would have been 1981 to 82. I was senior programmer at a company called Monitor Labs. They did embedded emission sensing devices. Basically, these are things that would sit on the top of smokestacks with sensors and actually collect data on the gases that were coming out and then transmit them. That's pretty much what Monitor Labs, that was its whole line. And we were going to do a whole new, brand new product line. I was the chief architect for that, chief software architect, not the hardware architect. And in that process, what I did, I had an office, an office with a door and a desk. And I really reported to two people. One was Steve Goldberg, who is the CTO and one of the co-founders of the company, who was a great guy. I admired him greatly. But I also had sort of a line report manager who had no technical background at all. So I started work on this, and basically I sat at my desk with my feet propped up on the desk, staring at the acoustic tiling in the ceiling for 3 weeks. Trying to think through everything that we needed to do, what this new family of devices had to accomplish, all the limitations we would face, and this direct line manager, non-technical, would come by at least once a day and glare at me. Because, by golly, he wanted me sitting with my feet on the floor, furiously writing or typing on a computer or something. And that's not what I was doing. I was architecting. I was trying to envision the whole scope of what we had to do, get the boundaries, you know, as small as possible, but sufficient to encompass the full product line. And did that for 3 weeks, and he got testier and testier, and I, being me, ignored him. Plus, I knew Steve Goldberg had my back. And after 3 weeks, I literally sat up, put my feet on the floor, got out an engineering pad of graph paper, and started writing, and basically sketched out the architecture. Good architecture takes time and thought to figure out what is the scope of what you're trying to do. So that's a long way of saying some of these were a bit sparser than I would like, but given the constraints of the class and the project, I'm not terribly bothered. Okay.
Do you have an example of the beginning?
Yeah, I'll pick out a couple that I thought actually did a good job. When I get to that. This was actually a pretty decent one, again, given the constraints. And you have the introduction here. This is GM Tools. Who's the chief architect? Give us a 1 minute song and dance.
Just do the introduction, explain what we want to get out of it for the end user, get a really high-level view of the architecture. And then I went through all the technology we're using and why we chose that and how it should help the customer in the end. And then also explain some of the interactions between the front end, the server, and the front end UI and the back end server, how some of those are defined and how they're used. That's just a really high-level overview of what we did.
This is actually, this is about the level that I think is appropriate for the class. This was nice. I mean, the high-level diagram was simple, but again, what you're building in this time frame is simple. It covers a number of issues. It's setting out stuff to help guide implementation. To say, okay, in other words, you want the architecture and design document, something you hand up to the team members and saying, this is what we're building. And hopefully everyone builds stuff that works together. Okay, CLC painting.
So,
Hang on a second, I'm getting there. Okay.
as is everyone else, if you scroll down a little bit, we have all our sketches for our UI, but they're not pulling up.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah. So we have like different views, modeling how we want to look in interactions. Then if we continue down, we have listed out all our like API calls and how that interaction will work with our database. And
specify the central algorithm here that you're doing. Probably the only thing, and it doesn't, now, I was the one who said UI determines your overall program. So basically, having a relatively well-documented UI is a great specification and suggestion of architecture. This one didn't have sort of a system architecture, here are the components talking to each other type diagram, which is usually good to have at the very least on a relatively high level. Let's go back. By the way, I hope you guys finish this game. This is really intriguing.
I click on the design one actually.
Okay. Okay, here's the design document.
Yeah, so we're doing a game, so I tried to kind of mimic game design documents I've come into contact with in the past. So
Okay.
it's not as, I don't know, it's a little bit different than the other ones I've been seeing. So we focused a lot on game feel interactions. So that systems is like our UML that kind of has some of the basic systems and how they interact with each other, and like functions and variables and stuff like that. For our lobby scene and for our actual game. So we're in a game lobby.
Oh, there it is.
And actually in some of the more basic systems there. We focused a lot on art because that's a big part of the game. And kind of the visual and like aesthetic kind of ideas we're going for.
Wow, that's cool.
But again,
It's cool looking. Again, I think an overall system diagram of major components and interactions would be good. This almost comes across it. This is all good stuff. This is good design stuff, which was part of the assignment, architecture design. I'd like to see a little bit more overall architecture and some of the constraints. But as I said, I'm given the constraints, I tend to be rather tolerant on this stuff. Okay. I think I have to have the private repo for your stuff, don't I? Wiki. There we go. Architecture. Okay. Now, did you have anything more than this? Who said?
There was a supporting doc.
Okay. Got this, I've got.
Kind of just explains it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just kind of just decided what things we're going to need in the app for the minimum viable product.
Okay. This strikes me as sparse. I would go back and expand on this with architecture and design to again, the idea of the documents is something you can handle. If you had someone new joining your team, would this be enough to bring them up to speed and direct them in the work that they had to do? Oops. Care about the PLA second artillery corps. Okay, architecture design documents. Okay, math but more? Yes.
Okay, so this is our design document. We kind of just went through the introduction, purpose, and then the architecture probably could have had an actual diagram, but what you see in the bulleted list is kind of the hierarchy of the architecture. So we've got different applets, and then if you look below the subsystem architectures, it goes through requirements, wireframes, breakdowns for each applet that's part of our system.
This actually also looks very interesting. I'm interested to see what you guys have to show on this. And yeah, an overall diagram would be good. Okay, property owner. Architecture design documents. Raw. Okay, this is probably too sparse here. Yes.
So part of this is also coming from just changes with users,
Uh-huh.
as far as some of the views that we're designing as we're going through and meeting with people. People are also giving different opinions. The main thing we have here is the technologies that we're using for the front end with Flutter, and the biggest constraints that we're going to come against is that Flutter is about to hit 1.0 in December, so if there are any changes to that, that might also affect us.
Yeah, you know,
And so I'm also keeping an eye on that.
he's using a pre 1.0.
It's in beta, but they're about to launch it, and so, but with his capabilities of both Android and iOS, it's really useful for that type of development.
Okay. Yes, this needs to be fleshed out. Okay. Puzzle RPG. And here we've got quite a bit. Okay, we've got purpose.
So that was just kind of explaining, again, kind of what our design goals were. And the other two documents explain, based on what we've got working with our console-based prototype. Oh, take my word for it, there's some classes. Okay, there we go.
I just logged in with Google. Oh, go away. I don't want to print. Don't take my money. Okay.
Yeah, so it's represented, the model classes are represented there. You can see where the input takes that opens up battle. Battle contains two arrays of spaces. Spaces can contain creatures or hazards like mines and stuff to gesture damage. Each creature has abilities, and the various subclasses of creatures, all the heroes and enemies, and all their moves are all represented as the subclass of creature and ability.
Okay. And you also had a sequence diagram.
So the sequence diagram is supposed to represent just a bit of how the typical battles play out based on what we have. So we're going to have to refactor this significantly to make it work with Unity, but functionality is there at least. So once the player chooses a level, the battle starts. The player has to choose a party, and then once the party is selected, the battle continues until one side can no longer fight,
Yep.
and so on and so forth.
Yep. That's actually a nice thing to have specified. Okay. Data analytics tool.
Right there.
Okay.
So I just used my documentation inside of the comments. Closely, those yellow tags are basically my documentation. This is extremely high level. I would say the smallest of the three is the left one, and I think it has about 35 classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to put that up there. I just wanted to give the high level, because these are the three major players. There's the person that gets the data into the system, which is the Salesforce data pusher. That program runs on third-party software, basically as a plugin. Then the database server handles the logic and the storage. And then finally, we have the first client that we'll build, which is just a generic web client that will query the data. So.
Okay. This is a great diagram as far as showing the overall architecture. I think you need to address some of the other issues that we talked about for architecture and design documents.
Sorry, while it's fresh in your mind, so what are...
What are your hard problems? What's your purpose? What were your technology trade-offs and decisions?
So if we just go down just a little bit, I guess I didn't talk about, on the yellow right there in the bottom left, it says, as data analytics product, our app would be much without that note right there. And that's kind of where I addressed the topics that were outlined in the PowerPoints.
Okay.
And then also, they're in the individual notes. I guess, I don't know, I didn't want it to be decoupled from the information by putting a separate document somewhere.
No, that's fair.
Okay, I just wanted
You
to...
feel you covered. I'll look through that a bit more carefully.
All right.
Okay, ParkMe. ParkMe Chief Architect. Yes.
So yeah, it's the general outline of the project. Because we're doing Redux, it also outlines some of the actions specifically we'll be using, and below goes into our database schema and the routes that we will be using.
Okay. Yeah, and this is probably again about with everything that you've managed to cover here. This is close to the level I would expect. Let's go to social social media for family events. Gotta go to the wikis. Okay.
So, basically just structured it, if we were asked to, but I think the only thing that I realized I should have put up there is that along with the other technologies, we're also going to use Amazon Web Services for our server.
You've got a
Well,
nice
Pretty
little
basic.
diagram there. Okay.
yeah.
Trash talk. Is our chief architect on trash talk?
Yeah, we focused on the two most important interfaces, which are the user interface and the web API to the server. And the APIs of the subsystems are addressed, but they still need to be fleshed out a bit more.
Okay. Actually, a good amount of detail in here. And again, you're back at the issue of, this is a document you can hand to someone to basically say, we want to be working on X, use this, come up to speed, and ask us for Okay, text-based adventure game. Yes, bring up here.
So this document is focused on our November deliverable,
Yep.
which is mainly around room navigation and inspecting items in the rooms. Because our project is text-based, we don't really have a clear-cut front-end and back-end. And so the way we structure our architecture is to separate the creative side from the actual game engine. So we made it so that theoretically, whether we're making it so that the creative side can write the items, the levels,
Basically
the whole
data
map.
driven,
Yeah, all did by themselves, and the game engine just pulls that in and is ignorant of the creative aspect and just runs it on its own. And yeah.
And last but not least, file.
Okay. So,
Is it the UML?
yeah, UML is the class diagram, and there's a sequence diagram in here as well that kind of goes over.
One special discount. Oh, that's the org chart. Or an org chart, okay. My first document,
That would make like my system.
okay.
Can we just put one, there's a link to our wiki. We're not doing
Let's see, you've got, let's go to your group wiki and see your architecture and design.
the link here should work. Get to my UML. Okay, this looks better.
Okay, so you go.
So this first panel just kind of declares the networking objects that we're using. And over here we have the sequence diagram for syncing our client and our server. Whenever we need to like refresh what's in the current store. Down here in the lower left is the client UML. The biggest part of that is the note. And our problem we kind of came up with that is what happens when you have multiple client devices trying to update the same note. So we came up with this idea of a timestamp and just a bunch of note data that in order to get a checksum,
Okay.
you can just
You need
compare that
identifier.
to get better performance out of
Okay.
it.
Great diagram, should probably have more text and explanation around this,
Yeah.
so that someone can pick it up and do something. Okay.
We kind of use the API of that.
Oh, the API, your
Very
API
separate
documentation.
document to the API that kind of describes and anyone can.
Hang on a
download
second.
that.
Where's
It's really what we
group
do.
wiki again? Oh, API, there we go.
So this describes all our different routes and
Okay.
data is going to pass back and forth.
Okay, that's some good documentation. Okay, so, I won't grade this yet, I suggest all of you go through and if I give you some feedback, do a little polishing or expansion. I do have, and I think, I said this after we already started, all the prior deliverables have been great.